So welcome to everyone, to members and officers, and to any of the public who are online. The meeting is being broadcast live. In the event of a fire alarm, in terms of those who are in the building, everyone should immediately leave the building through the nearest door and assemble in the car park near Karen's house. The Swindon free password is Dream Shine Level, all lowercase and all one word. Hi, Ravi. Firstly, we've got apologies for absence.
Chair, the apology I have got is from Councillor Bushell, who will try to get here, but if she can make it, then obviously she's tendered her apologies.
And I also had apologies from Councillor Nick Gardner, who's rather unwell, and I think he's made a wise decision since he's sitting next to me not to bring his germs with him. Are there any other? I think we're Councillor Dears, he might still be on his way. Item 2, declarations of interest. Just wish to remind members that they should declare any known interest in any matters to be considered. Members should also make a declaration should it become apparent during the meeting they have an interest in the matters being discussed. Do members have any declarations they wish to make at this time? I'll just make a declaration that I'm a councillor and chair of Swindon Parish Council, because it may be relevant in terms of the question, but it's non-prejudicial. If during the meeting you find there is something that comes up where you do have a personal prejudicial interest, you should just advise us and not be involved in the discussion, and may need to leave the meeting at that point. Item 3, minutes. Receiving the minutes of the meetings held on the 13th of May 2025. Are we happy with their accuracy? No issues. I'll take them as read then. Don't know whether anyone's got any issues they wish to raise from them. Councillor Miller-Barry?
Yeah, so it was just about the EV charging points. This consultation process was planned to start in July. Is that? Would you be able to give us a bit of an update?
I'll have to come back to you on that.
Yeah, fine.
Thank you. So anyway, the minutes are being accepted as a true and accurate record, and I'll sign them once we've completed the meeting. Item 4, public question time. Public question time is limited to 50 minutes. Do we have any public questions?
No advance warning. Any questions, Chair?
Are there any in the room? No. We can therefore move on. First item is item 5, tree planting and the community forest update. I'd just like to say here, I have made a point that in terms of reports to the committee, I really don't want lengthy reports. So what we've got is perfectly adequate, and I don't want officers to spend huge amounts of time producing lots of stuff, because very often the richness of what they can tell us is as good as what they can show us on screen. So Councillor Watts and Eden Speller, who's the Green Infrastructure Programme Manager. If you'd like to...
Sorry, Chair, but it's Councillor Chinkowski and Eden Speller.
Oh, is it?
Okay, my name's not on the recording here, so you can work it out.
Yeah. Okay, fine, thank you.
As able.
Right. So do members wish to ask any questions or make any comments on the papers? So I've got, while we're waiting just to see, I've got one question. It relates to tree planting, and that's why I declared the non-prejudicial interest as councillor and chair of South Swindon Parish Council. Certainly in the last round, many of the potential sites that were identified for the programme turned out to have issues very last minute. And I'm not sure that the process of selecting the appropriate sites was quite as effective as it might have been. I don't think there were large numbers of trees involved in those. I think there were more infilling in various areas. But I think bearing in mind that this is very, the actual time of year is very relevant. I think if we've got particular areas where we need to do checks, we probably need to do them early so that we can get on with planting at the appropriate time.
Yeah, just, yes, and that would prevent things like North Street, where in fact planting was done in sites that a long time ago, in sites that subsequently turned out to be inappropriate. The trees died, and now we've got very cross residents who want their trees back. They don't understand why the council has taken away their trees, which we haven't. It was just as a gas main that's all the trees died. So completely agree.
Yeah, and I know certainly in Norm where we had some particular issues, it was services that was the problem.
Yeah.
To be quite an area of green space. In theory, you could put some trees, and they have historically they have some really nice cherry blossom trees there, but it's a different matter coming along 20 or 30 years after the services have gone in and starting to dig up to put some new ones in.
Yeah. So a lot of those grass, I will let you come in, I promise, but a lot of those grass verges were put in initially in order to enable access to services in the first place, which is something that I did not know until comparatively recently. So it's counterintuitive because you see a nice green space and you're like, well, why don't we put a big oak in the middle of that? And actually, no, you can't. But I think maybe, and I was going to talk about this, but I haven't seen it for a few weeks. We could look at maybe where it's not trees and it's bushes, where it's trees with shallow roots that spread sideways rather than deep roots that go down. So there could be all kinds of ideas there. But yeah, I agree that it needs more scrutiny, which I will finally now let Ian explain how he does.
Thanks very much, Councillor. It's all about managing expectations, most definitely. There is a rigid process that is followed in terms of land that's identified, and then the process that goes from checking utilities, checking ownership, so forth. On this occasion that I'm familiar with, there was a breakdown in communication, and things were delayed, unfortunately. So by the time the parish had decided with those locations which they wanted to do, those processes of identifying utilities, etc., was done too late. So we learned from that one, but by and large, it's normally sort of hiccup free. But on this occasion, it wasn't. So there are apologies from my officers as a consequence of that.
It's not meant as a major criticism. These things happen. I think the trouble was we'd raised expectations by residents, and they're probably disappointed. Whereas if we'd sort of said from the beginning, you can't have them because the expectations would have been a lot less.
Thanks, Council. So what we're doing at the moment, we're with your officers at the Parish Council who are identifying various areas. We'll then undertake the relevant assessments of those, and the process will be duly followed to ensure that expectations are met. We can appreciate that, obviously, when people go knocking on people's doors and saying, do you want to and then, of course, saying, yes, we'd love it, and then suddenly it doesn't happen, or it happens in a place where they weren't expected, etc. We really do want to avoid that, because one, it's costly, timely. My officer's time is limited, as is your officers as well within the parish. So we just need to make sure we communicate better across the piece.
Yeah. In terms of resource, do we feel we got enough resource, because I think that's the other thing. It's such a condensed period. It's really hard work, I think, for everybody when it needs to happen.
And no to that. Our resources are fairly limited. We're limited by our funding which we receive from DEFRA to enable the staff. And so, as you are aware, we are in partnership with Wiltshire Wildlife Trust and Wiltshire Council to deliver across the community forest, including the extended hay, and including officers within the borough as well, who we utilise. So in terms of the resources that we've got, it's fairly limited, and it can get slightly overstretched as well, because obviously we're looking after the Swindon borough area, but as I say, we're looking much further afield as well. We go into South Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire, and most of Wiltshire north of Salisbury Plain. So we are covering a shockingly big area, and hence why we've been so successful in any case compared to the other community forests throughout England. So we're one of the top performing, which is something for Swindon to take note of how much we've actually achieved here.
Yeah, I think we need to congratulate all those volunteers and officers from the various bodies for the work that they've done.
And a substantial amount of volunteers from Swindon. So thank you.
Councillor Penny.
Thanks, Jim. With regards to resourcing challenges, have you approached any of the employees in the town, for example, a mission night, where they have a dedicated day for all the employees to volunteer? Recently, they have done some volunteering to work with you. If required, I'm happy to connect the right people to you and explore the volunteering option.
Yes, Councillor, we certainly are always open for more volunteers. We do work with Nationwide and other large businesses within Swindon. However, it's something that we would want to actually sort of encourage more and promote more as well. So anything that you could do would be much duly welcome.
Yeah, I'll talk with them and see what we can do.
Fantastic.
Councillor Butcher.
Yeah, fair enough. I was particularly interested in 3.5 in the report, talking about the additional woodland creation and tree planting. You mentioned around urban street tree planting. I know we've had a number of conversations on this evening, so you'll know my views on it and how keen I am to see that happen. What challenge is that in terms of it's obviously more complex than planting in green open land. Do we foresee us being able to do that in any great quantity this year, bearing in mind the funding till sort of early next year, by the looks of it? And secondly to that, do we, in terms of the overall funding, do we think that we're likely to be able to spend the majority of it in the timeline that we have?
Thanks very much, Councillor. Well, there is an update which I wasn't able to actually put into the report, is that I can confirm we've got another 3 years funding, which is excellent, which will enable us to do so much more across Swindon and the community forest itself. We are in talks with the Woodland Trust in how we can actually do what they call as the tree equity within Swindon itself, and looking at our areas of opportunity where we can actually do more actual urban planting within Swindon itself. So there's a lot more to, there's a lot of work we need to do behind that. Mm-hmm. You mentioned what the challenges are. The challenges are, as we've already mentioned, significantly is the utilities. Mm-hmm. They do get very, very upset if we disturb it. And then not only that, obviously the residents as well. So we've got to be very mindful. And the problem attached to that is that it's not impossible to plant in the highway, as we would call it, bit footpaths, etc. But it does command substantial monies to enable that to happen. Mm-hmm. We are looking at various alternatives how we deliver that, ranging from planters or species of trees, etc., or to the root structure, guards, etc. But again, we then go into the realms of, so if you use a planter, which are a real good quick fix, that is short term, 5 years max, but then you've got that ongoing cost of looking after it, like watering it. And no matter what, you would have to water that pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And so therefore you've got the cost of that, and you've got the infrastructure behind the watering, where's the water coming from, so on and so forth. So you get into a realm of matters. So it's something which we overall throughout for the town, as in within other urban areas, is looking at what we can see as the quick wins. So looking at the soft verges, Swindon, identifying those locations, not only through the main stretches, but within the residential areas as well, putting back trees, which would have originally been there to begin with. That's in the soft verges. And then looking sort of more strategically down the line in the next 2 or 3 years is what can we actually deliver them. Because as I said, we're in a conversation with the Woodland Trust, how we can actually work together in managing some form of planting within the urban areas.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just come in on this? I think a lot of opportunities, so there's kind of two pieces to that, right? There's putting trees back where they used to be, or putting green spaces back where green spaces used to be in the urban areas as they already exist, as we already have. But we've also got quite a lot of development coming up. So I think the key kind of strategic priority there, and I think where we really are going to get a lot bang for our buck in terms of hectareage and how many trees we can put in, is that as new developments, the redevelopment of the town plaza, or new developments like Marlow Avenue, whatever it is, we've just had an announcement from the government about loads of money, 20 million or something for Pin Hill for redevelopment. Pin Hill happens to be a tree desert, by the way. It's one of our, if you look at the tree covered map of Swindon, it's that area of the Peas is very notably sparse, right? So that's going to give us loads and loads of opportunity to put a lot of planting, kind of like what has gone on Fleming Way, which is a lot of planting has gone down there. And the key thing for that green thread through Swindon is to make sure that the different teams are talking to each other, which they are, because once a month they're stuck in a room with me for an hour and a half, all hearing what the others are doing, planning and Eden and all that. So that we don't accidentally miss an opportunity to green an area by design, from the ground floor, rather than coming in and very expensively putting stuff back in.
Sorry, Marcus.
Yeah.
I think that sounds great, and that's obviously a really good strategy to do that, to make sure we're building it in from that. I'm thinking with my local ward councillor hat on for a moment, with my own ward being a relatively older wards in the town, and would benefit greatly from some of that urban planting as well, being fairly sparse in terms of roadside trees. It was never designed in from the beginning, and that's an error. It dates back to the 60s mostly, but we'd love to see it something that we could correct in the long term as well, definitely. So thank you.
So, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Just on with regarding the urban planting, we do need the support of the parishes to enable this. And it's a bit of a theme that we come across, is that there can be some resistance to tree planting on verges or in areas of open space because of the additional work that may be required by the grounds maintenance teams, which is avoiding hitting them with MOs, increased streaming activity, which obviously is more timely. But there are ways that we can actually take that on board in terms of those perceived obstacles. So when we are talking to the parishes, we do need their support, in particular those who are directed by they're strongly influenced by their grounds teams.
Thank you.
Councillor Kowski, in terms of the planning situation, I mean, as I'm on the planning committee and a number of others are as well. And of course, we tend to look at planning from what's above ground, really, more than anything. And of course, we talk about the ecology and swales and all the other things that need to go with it. But when the developments are being planned, are we happy that the developers are planning the trees and in a way that is unlikely in the longer term to interfere with services. Because if not, we'll be in the same situation we're in currently, where it looks all good piece of paper, but then suddenly down the line we find there's loads of services that mean we cannot address any trees that have died over, in the next 20 or 30 years.
So first of all, yes, and especially since the law on biodiversity and net gain has come in, they have to think about that really carefully, or it costs them money. So the legislation is very much on our side here. But I think it's also, as Councillor Butcher was saying, it's a question of like changing priorities through time. So in the 60s, everything was still much greener. So, putting in trees was not always the priority. We thought, well, if we build people nice houses and they have their own gardens, that's all the green they need. And they didn't allow for that roadside tree planting or whatever it is, in the same way that, they didn't lay down any new formal parks like the Victorians did. It was just not a thing. So when you're coming in to those sorts of areas, that's where we're getting the problems. But where it's a new build, especially if it's, in the concept, it's going to be immensely complex. And yes, all of these different people are going to have to talk to each other, but we're just we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. But in on virgin sites, whether they be brownfield or greenfield, say the Neb or something like that. Yes, absolutely. Or even timber fields, where the redevelopment, when that comes forward, all of that has to be integrated. And because today our priorities are very much for greenery, for canopy, for trees for climate, for tree planting, then they will make sure that will work together. I don't know what problems that stirs up for 50 years down the future, because none of this is a crystal ball, but we're doing the best we can for our priorities and what we know is important to people today.
Thank you, that's great to hear. Councillor Barron.
Yeah, talking about the trees in the town centre, I just wanted to endorse the fact that the planting on Fleming Way looks really great.
Thank you.
And it looks very carefully done, so that as long as it gets watered, it will look after itself. Which is great. The other thing I was really pleased to see down there was where the catalpa fell over and died. There is a new catalpa.
There is.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So
Do you know how much people complain about that? Do you know how mad people on Facebook were about us putting in that catalpa tree?
Well, they were cross about it.
Yes, they were cross about it. I'm not, well, I just don't know. I don't know. I'm so glad somebody's happy.
50 years time, we'll all be sitting under that. I won't be, but we will be sitting under that tree. It'll be a fabulous tree. So you can, and that's you can plant big trees on the pavement. All things being, if the circumstances are right. So that's great. I wanted to say there were things called council scorecards which came out a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't do great. But I think I couldn't work out how they did the marking. It's quite weird. And there were things with biodiversity was one of the areas where we didn't do well, and I thought we're putting a lot of work into biodiversity. One question was, do you have a target to increase tree cover? Well, which of course we do. But we've got no time to run. So I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know. Yeah.
Go for it.
Is this one? What is it? So I actually spoke to who organises the climate scorecards, and they do things about on Tuesday this week. I think it comes down to their methodology and how they get the answers. They frequently rely on FOI requests to get information, and I think it's quite likely, and I was one of several people who asked this question, which is that's not a great way to get information from people who are under quite stretched resource time. So it could be a case of Eden didn't get the FOI, we didn't put in the FOI in the appropriate manner, because objectively we obviously are doing that, as are a number of other councils.
Yeah.
So I think it's as much how they get the information as much as what we're actually doing. Not a great way of going about trying to get info.
No, obviously, they have all sorts of different sources, including volunteers. So I think it's slightly random. In fact, some things were just wrong, like it said we have no green flag parks. Well, we do have a green flag park, we've got some marks, that's a green flag park. So that was just a wrong answer. Should have been something that's quite easy to check. Yes. Anyway, I think it's quite useful in a way to have these scorecards. It's kind of worth looking at, but not taking it all for gospel.
We could go through it and score ourselves, with the full information and seeing we come out, not in a score, checking our own homework sort of way, but just as you say, as an aid to understanding where we are.
Yeah.
So what's you wanted to come in?
Yeah, just want to say on Fleming Way that it's got built-in irrigation, so it's not just for
Yeah,
so that should be good.
It's excellent.
And I was just saying those scorecards are only as good as the way the information is collected. So
They absolutely are.
and
Yeah.
Maybe they're not as useful
Yeah,
as they should be.
I think I certainly wouldn't take anything on them for gospel, but I think they are quite worth looking at what our council are doing. So the other thing I wanted to say was it says the report referred us to the WENP, so I was thinking, what's that? So that's the West of England Nature Partnership. And that was talking about markets, that they want to bring in nature and climate markets to match up, to get as a way of getting private money into forest and biodiversity creation. So the idea is that landowners will offer biodiversity units projects and developers will buy them. But it doesn't seem to be working. So they had a round where they tried to do this marrying up of landowners offering projects and people buying biodiversity units. But the landowners are all charging too much. And there wasn't enough demand for biodiversity units. So it seems a shame. I mean, that seems, have we got any experts on this stuff here? Yeah, great, tell us.
No expert, councillor, I'm afraid,
Okay.
but when we're not part of. So we are looking to be in a local nature partnership with Wiltshire Wildlife Trust, Wiltshire Council, and maybe stretching this slightly wider than that. We probably do need to look at West of England Nature Partnership, because obviously that is a big target area with a wider net in capturing funding, as you mentioned, BNG or business investment. So that's something that does need to explore further, and something which I'll be talking to my leadership about where we are going.
So it seems.
I don't know if it's the same thing or not. I literally don't know. But remember we had a whole discussion about covenants, where you can put a covenant on lands that it will be set aside for biodiversity net gain instead of being built on. But a local authority can't do that on its own land, because that really is marking our homework. Right?
Yeah,
so it's kind of setting up.
Yeah.
We're paying our own biodiversity net gain kind of costs. So I think I really don't know, but it's possible that that's where that initiative slightly came cover, because local authorities would be the largest landowners, apart from like the Duchy of Cornwall, which I doubt most do.
Yes, I suppose. I think it was more for private landowners. Yes, the idea. If you have a project, you have to guarantee that land is available for the project for about 25 years, which probably is something that doesn't really appeal to landowners all that much. But I think it was a way of trying to get private money in, because otherwise you're dependent on subsidy, aren't you? So it's not.
Well, and on developers, right? So basically, it's as a way of making sure that we're not losing biodiversity to development. The system as it exists today is pretty functional.
Yeah.
And the additional funding that would come to, okay, well, where do we create more green areas? Where do we manage more rewilding, more planting, more everything, without there any, independent of any development, is where the DEFRA money is, where the climate money is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Butcher, then Councillor Manro, then Councillor Grover.
I just wanted to ask quickly on irrigation, but Chris touched slightly on it, so my question's changed slightly. It's great to hear that we've put irrigation in Fleming Way with what Marina was talking about in terms of town centre and building, long-term plans for development areas. Are we going to be advising on putting irrigation into any of these new areas? Because personally, I think it's absolutely necessary based on climate change and droughts.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, so any planting that most certainly is within the outstanding concrete paved areas will require some form of irrigation system to enable direct access to the roots, to enable collecting of water. Without it, the trees would significantly struggle their first several years of growth. So yes.
Councillor Manro.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, can we do anything within the planning policy to force the developers to leave a service strip for utilities? I've tried on the highways, that it doesn't work, but is there a planning policy we can look at within Swindon Borough Council? That's one question. The other one is the parish grounds maintenance team only maintain up to 2 meters of the tree. The rest is not made by parish, but by Swindon Borough Council. I think the split responsibility, which should really be making parish council responsible, seeing if they can get their resources together. That's the two issues that come up.
I'll have to get back to you about the planning policy, because I don't know how the conversation goes between the developers, the planning authority, and the utility companies, because at the end of the day, it's the utility companies who are putting in the utilities, right? So I'll get back to you. It's a good question, and I'm not getting involved about the parishes.
Sorry, with parishes, sorry, Chair, through you. You're saying that the parishes should look after the whole tree, or just a bit?
I'm saying either Swindon Borough Council or parish, because at present, the argument is, oh, we only go up to 2 meters. And the canopy is over the road, nobody wants to then go and crown a tree. So we need to come back and say, yes, we'll plant trees, but who's going to maintain them?
Well, I don't think it's an argument, because I think parishes know where the responsibility ends and the borough knows where their responsibility starts. So, yeah, if we get parishes to look after the whole tree, that'd be fine. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, but there is that issue coming up.
Yeah.
Regularly.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Manro. Councillor Grover.
And there's already been some comment that we get a lot of help and support from volunteer groups, whether that's planting new trees, digging the hole, and I'm aware in my ward there's groups do pathways for existing forests. So I had some questions around if there's an accident, digging a hole, cut the door off, or if the tree falls on them. What's the position in terms of accident insurance?
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. So any work that's been undertaken on Swindon Borough Council land must be under the permission of Swindon Borough Council. Swindon Borough Council should also know and be aware what is going on its land, what activities are going on either through by the parish councils or by some other means. So where we've got agreed partnerships with community groups, those community groups will normally have their own insurances in place, or they will be working via Swindon with Wiltshire Wildlife Trust through the Swindon Forest Meadows programme, where they will be covered by the insurance of Wiltshire Wildlife Trust. So we have got if any councillors are with any volunteers going and doing some well-meaning work on land, but you feel that they may not be covered, then please let us know as soon as you can. So we can just go in there and enable and support them where we can.
Yes, parish councils are required to maintain third-party liability insurance, which does cover approved activities by volunteers on their property.
As long as it's not guerrilla
Right, I think that probably closes where we are, unless anybody has anything further they want to add. Thank you, Councillor Strakowski and Eden for your input. We've got following recommendations. First of all, to note the progress of tree planting in the Great Western Community Forest, and I think what we should also put in there our appreciation of those officers and volunteers from the various organisations who worked on that project, because I think that's really important to recognise the great work that's been done, and also to consider opportunities for increasing tree planting within Swindon. I think that rests with councillors, residents, parish councils, and all other bodies in terms of identifying what might be suitable sites for the future, not just for this year's round, but maybe for future rounds. Are we happy to agree to those recommendations, everybody? All those in favour? Yes. Ms. Cameron, thank you. Thanks very much. Item 6 is the current status of net zero efforts. So we have Edward Jones, who's the strategic lead for sustainability and climate change, who's going to talk us through this. Over to you, Ed.
Hello, good evening, everybody. So yeah, Edward Jones here, as you haven't met me. I've been in place for just under 6 months now. And a lot of what I've been doing over the last 6 months is firstly trying to ascertain, where Swindon actually is. Do quite a lot of sort of information gathering, and that is feeding to, as I may have mentioned, I'll be delivering sort of a highly ambitious roadmap for Cabinet on what Swindon could theoretically do to both tackle climate change, but perhaps more importantly to improve the quality of life of the residents of Swindon. So the information I've given you today, this report, is based predominantly on the council's scope 1 and 2 emissions. There's a brief comment there on what the total borough's emissions are, which are about 1.5 million tonnes of CO2 a year. This is based on scatter data, which is publicly available. That is 2019 data. We use 2019 because obviously 2020 to 2022, the information there is particularly unreliable because of lockdown. 23-24, we're still trying to ascertain what is the baseline there. The business as usual has not yet fully solidified. Seems that sort of 2-3 days a week is going to be standard, but that isn't the case everywhere. So we're kind of waiting for where we are. So 2019 is typically the date that is most frequently used. As you'll see on page 16, we have the scope 1 and 2 emissions of the council's direct actions. So scope 1 emissions are basically anything that we burn, so typically diesel, as well as any other fuels, but these are one of the large ones, gas in our buildings for heating or for cooking or anything like. And scope 2 is basically electricity. There's a couple of other things in there, but essentially it's electricity. What you see in figure 1 on page 16 is that we've had quite a big drop from 2018/19 year to 2023/2024. If you scroll slightly further down to figure 2, which is at the bottom of page 16, you'll see that this is on track. So that's the orange dot, which is where we are today. It is pretty much on track with the government of Theresa May's interim targets of a 57% reduction by 2030 and a 78% reduction by 2035. Now, I'm not suggesting that Swindon as a council, ironclad sticks to these targets. I'm just using them as a baseline of what the general ambition is. So the good news is that obviously we're on track, but I think Swindon should be proud of that. That is good. The slightly sort of more concerning point is that the reason we're on track, for the most part, is switching to LED lights in street lamps. That's been the single biggest chunk. The second biggest chunk has been buying new refuse vehicles, which are far more energy efficient. And the third biggest chunk is the grid has decarbonised over those 5 years. More solar, more wind, more nuclear on the grid, and less intense fossil fuel usage. So our electricity has gone down, but that isn't obviously a conscious choice that we've made. The next sort of step to get us to 57% reduction by 2030 will require slightly more conscious choices on our part. One of those is HBO fuels, which also we'll be talking about later tonight. And there will be a couple of options that I will recommend within the roadmap about what we can do to get to that. So that's a very quick overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
With the councillor David.
Thanks for the report. So is this a report based on Swindon Borough Council's argument, or is this include any initiative to make the residents to follow some incidents?
At the moment, this is just the council, so I will be coming up with a number of for the residents, but I'm conscious that I don't want the council to be seen as determining how residents should live their lives.
Okay. Can I ask you? Ultimately, like, so the council is ultimately affordable for the town as well as the residents. Yeah. Keeping that in mind, with the public sector, ultimately the council responsibility to ensure like the quality of the life in the town. So, can't we work towards taking some initiative where residents also get educated on the long-term energy?
Yes, very much so. So one of the main things I'm trying to do is to sort of revamp our website and put the information available to our residents. So that's been quite a big push from James, the Net Zero Working Group, which I mentioned previously when we met last month, which is 3 weeks ago now. That sort of whole topic was on how do we better both to the residents, what we're doing as a council, and also sort of internally to ourselves, so that they've got more information about what resources are available to them, how this is impacting their lives, and sort of all of the things that we can do to make their quality of life better. So as we push for, through bus routes and cycle routes, and as the usage of cars just changed, that will improve their quality. And we know that. That's not really a scientific debate, and that will help people that have asthma and like, and we can do those kind of things. We can provide more information on the use of solar panels, which can obviously, although there is a higher upfront cost, there are lower running charges. So they can also use the amount of heat pumps. Heat pumps are able to act, so that's a cooling factor as well during hot summer, to help improve people's comfort. I'm very susceptible to heat, so I love heat pump private. But yeah, there's a lot of options to what we're trying to do to let them know.
Thank you. Anyone else before I come in? Just sort of a couple of questions. The main one, is the Swindon plan the best place for what we propose or need to do on net zero? Because it seems to some that some of what we need to do around this is almost diluted or isn't clear enough in that. So are we likely to need a separate, if you like, net zero plan that runs alongside the Swindon plan rather than be totally embedded within it?
I think so. Probably my assumption. I thought that's maybe a bit more of a policy-related question to you all here than potentially me. But for me, the roadmap that I have is going to be sort of alongside the Swindon plan and that kind of thing. And that will be, as I say, it'll be highly ambitious of what we can do. I think there is opportunity in Swindon to really be one of the leading local authorities, not just in the southwest, but across the nation. On decarbonisation, with a number of benefits, both geography and other factors. But that will, I think that should be a sign from what the Swindon plan should be. And if we've got the opportunity to do that, then let's do it, but not the determining factor.
And sort of picking up on that, I think until you came along, I think the resource we had in this, and it's still not sufficient, we could obviously do a lot more, has not really enabled us to make as much progress as I think is the case in one or two other councils. So indeed, as the climate summit with Wiltshire Council last weekend, I saw, we see what they've been able to achieve in some areas. So are we looking to work with other councils, see what they've done and try and find those quick wins to help us on this path?
Yeah, very much so. So yeah, at present it is obviously just me to try and deliver the Green Swindon mission, which is I have made an offer to someone to join my team, so the resource will increase. I have been speaking extensively to Wiltshire about what they've done and what they're doing. I've also spoken to Oxford. For anyone who hasn't read it, I think Oxford's 2040 net zero ambition is probably the most complete report out there on what is doable. Part of that is that they have a world-leading university in their town city, which can help them make a number of calculations, which Swindon does not have yet. But I'm going to say they can do this by 2040, so I'm trying to learn from them what we can do. One of the things that we're trying to copy within James Stock's directorate is they did a lot of doing this, and we're trying to do something similar as well.
Yeah, so that's great to hear. And another question, I mean, I recognise that we've got our solar farms because I've been on the board of one of those companies. But one of the things that I do feel a little disappointed is that we encourage our residents to join with, where we join with Wiltshire in terms of solar together. But if you look around our own council buildings, it's very little in terms of solar panels. And I know how long it took me to keep pressing to try to get solar panels installed on the South Swindon Parish Council buildings, and that is now complete, and I think they're fully operational now, just this last week or 10 days, but that's taken years to get to that point. So is there some thought about what we can do? Because it does seem to be a relatively quick win.
Yes, Louise Delamura, the energy officer, and I are working quite extensively to bring solar back to a key point on what Swindon should be doing in the immediate future. We are looking at a number of ways to get solar on steam museum, as an example. Trying to get that to be far more energy efficient, to be saving a lot of money and more comfortable in particular winter. I believe the steam museum is rather cold during winter. I think one of the issues that we've got is that the solar farms are not particularly popular because they're not as profitable as they were concluded to be. Based on the information that Louise and I have read, they weren't calculated properly. Those farms are actually operating as efficiently as they were always going to, but they were under the conclusion that they would be more efficient. So they're always under, and they always will be, because there perhaps wasn't the expertise inside to get this accurate. We think we've now got that expertise. We think we've now got good engagement with a number of our external companies. To try and sort of provide more evidence on why solar is a very good solution for Swindon. We're geographically in a really great place for solar, being south of the country. It's cheaper to build a solar farm here than it is in comparative areas, Bath and Bristol, sort of along our same geographical line. We need to make better use of solar. That's one of the top priorities for the council.
Super, that's great to hear. Thank you. Councillor.
Hi. A couple of years ago, when myself and a few other colleagues first went on to our parish council, we pushed very hard to get electric vehicles, and there was an awful lot of resistance to that from the team there. You know, they're more expensive, they sink into the ground, they're expensive space. We did end up getting 2 new electric vehicles, which just thinking outside the box a little bit. They were smaller than the existing diesel vehicles, but they still did the job they needed to do, and they were actually cheaper and they're cheaper to run. But when we had meetings here in the procurement team, it felt that's the same resistance and there's cost issues there, which are understandable. But is there that way of thinking about how it's being used, etc., and can alternatives be sourced?
What purpose are those electric vehicles for?
And they just go around emptying all the bins and the
Yeah, they're grounds maintenance vehicles generally, so they'd be doing grass edging and stuff like that.
Yes,
bins.
I'm working with Simon Anthony and Tom Lawrence, who are both from the Waste Director, Science Director, and Tom's the head of Waste there, on sort of, any full proposal of decarbonising Waterside Depot and what we could do in the immediate future. I think that there are legitimate concerns about the use of a electric refuse vehicle. Those diminish with every year as technology improves. But it is also correct that buying a new refuse vehicle is more likely going to be more expensive than the equivalent ICE vehicle. And if you don't have capacity at site to charge, we don't have to pay more money to charge it. It can be not much cheaper. For anyone that is sort of unaware, the new fleet of, in particular, Chinese electric vehicles are arguably cheaper than the petrol equivalent, both up front and obviously the running costs, especially when you've got solar. You can get solar for about 2p per kilowatt hour, which is about 20 times cheaper than diesel. So it's colossal for the council in saving budget. We've really spoken about Simon Toll and I, is to sort of have a rolling changeover from diesel vehicles to electric vehicles. So that we don't all do it at once, we don't have a significant shock. We can get the teams that are using those vehicles to gradually more used to it. They might use an electric vehicle once a week and then 3 times a week and so on and so forth. And we can gradually build up capacity. So we've got a plan of what we're trying to do. What we'd love to do is try and get sort of more trial runs in. I think there was a trial electric vehicle I've been told was used maybe 2 years ago. This is at Waterside Depot as opposed to something smaller. And the quoted range of 100 miles an hour, so 100 miles was never reached. The maximum they got was 50 miles before the vehicle had to go back for charging, which is obviously just not practical. I would say that is being diminished. I would also quite like for us to trial hydrogen. We used to be part of the hydrogen corridor. If we can be part of that again, that'd be great. I'm not convinced by the technology, but if there is an alternate, but the purpose of hydrogen is that it should run as easily to drive as a diesel, so you don't have the range anxiety. But obviously that only works if you have a source of hydrogen. So again, we can look at that option there and see if the hydrogen corridor from Cardiff will be extended this far east. So we've got options.
Thank you. Councillor Butcher.
Yeah, very, very pleased to hear that we are looking at rolling replacements in that way. Echo what Councillor Grace said in terms of moving to electric vehicles. I think it's absolutely imperative that we do that, and we've seen similar resistance along the way at parish level and things as well to that sort of transition. About hydrogen and where we talked about looking at what other councils do, what other organisations do. I personally remain incredibly sceptical about the future of hydrogen when it comes to any sort of transport, and I would be very hesitant to us investing money in that when taking on board your point about the sort of first generation electric vans and things like that we may have trialled. We're on to, we'll probably consider it third generation these days, but a number of generations moved on where they are significantly better, and I would have quite serious concerns about us investing any pound, frankly, in hydrogen that could be better spent on electric vehicles. I mean, if talking about looking at what other councils do, I think we should definitely look more globally as well at what hydrogen trials have been done, because by and large, the inevitable conclusion of a hydrogen trial in any sort of transport, whether it's road, rail, etc., is it getting cancelled early and then converting them to battery electric. That has been shown all around the world. So yeah, personally, would be
so I agree with a lot of what you're saying, very much so. There have been 2 successful hydrogen trials. One is in the UK, it's up in Salford, in Manchester, if you've read about that one. And also is in West. Now, the reasons why those have worked is because they have specifically built up the infrastructure for hydrogen, and it's not a very niche of GX area, if you will. I think hydrogen is a complete non-starter if Swindon doesn't become part of the hydrogen corridor again. I think that the only way that we consider that is if we do become part of that corridor. And you said we won't have a hydrogen storage, we have to be bringing that in. Doesn't work. So I fully agree with you that the theoretical purpose of hydrogen don't work unless we've got a reliable, regular source of hydrogen. Even if producing water is quite helpful in trial.
And so on.
My hydrogen, as well as the energy it takes to isolate hydrogen, is huge, and you don't get the from the front end. So it might look good on the street, but all the way through it's no idea. And also know that I went to Alstrom's headquarters in Stuttgart in Salzgitter, and they were trialling the hydrogen train, which has rolled out into Stuttgart now, so they've got that working. And then when I was about and said, "This is the future trains," and they went, "No, electric."
I think that's the one they've cancelled now.
Well, Stuttgart cancelled it.
There was one in Germany that they started.
That's the only one, so
They
it would be-
cut it off and put batteries in it.
Yeah, that is right.
Yeah, so virtually all hydrogen is connected to a carbon atom in the form of fossil fuels, or is connected to an oxygen atom in the form of water. Or an oxygen hydrogen bond takes about 3 times the amount of energy to break apart than you get when you burn that hydrogen back. So the only way that hydrogen is ever remotely viable is when we have a huge in excess of solar and wind, and therefore, rather than turning those solar farms or those wind farms off, which we currently have to do because the infrastructure can't handle it, electrolyzer, happy days, we can get hydrogen there. So yeah, until all that's in place. There is a German company called Thorn, something or other, who retrofit ICE vehicles to being hydrogen fuel cells, which is significantly cheaper than buying a new hydrogen vehicle. It's only sort of 30 to 40,000 pounds depending. Also, obviously, that's a huge difference from buying either a new diesel vehicle. But again, I don't think that's a starter unless we've got the supply wins from the present we don't.
Who feels like they've dropped back into a chemistry class?
The 90s.
70s. Councilman Bell.
Yeah, a couple of things. First, but just by the way, who's pushing for hydrogen? It never seems to die. I mean, who is pushing for it?
So currently fossil fuel industry is because obviously it means that they can just continue to dig out oil and gas.
Yeah.
There are a number of perks of hydrogen over electric. The main one being the sheer volume of rare earth minerals that we need for electric, which we do not need for hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking, multiple factors of difference here.
Right.
The other perk of hydrogen is that it is not intermittent. If we're able to manufacture hydrogen at scale, we can use it as we currently use natural gas. So, we wouldn't ever have to turn anything off. We can just be gathering it and capturing it. And the final one is obviously when it burns, it produces water. So when there are areas that are suffering from droughts, you can essentially turn a power centre, a power generation centre into a water factory. Then you just pump out clean water for a reservoir or the like. So there are a number of ways in which hydrogen beats electric and will always beat electric, but until significant sums of money are sent towards it, until in particular we start to do offshore hydrogen electrolysis so that we don't turn off our wind farms, it's never going to be on a scale. But the main one is the difference in materials. We don't have to go to Africa, for example, to try and get lithium.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I see. Okay. So that's that. Just thinking the bulk of the council's emissions will in fact be scope 3.
It will be, yes.
So at some point we're going to have to get rid of the scope 3 emission.
Yes.
And this is going to involve surely a straightforward way of doing it is to revisit our procurement policies.
Yes.
Is that something we're involved in at the moment?
So I have spoken to James Shaw about the procurement policies that we currently have at Swindon. We are looking at what we can do to change them. So decarbonisation is already supposed to be a consideration within our procurement practice. I think we obviously have to consider the financial status of the council. We can't just be, we can't be getting deliveries from companies that use zero emissions vehicles if they cost 10 times more. I think that's not practical. But what we will be doing is start to looking at ways that we can encourage more sustainable use. That's essentially the whole point of scope 3.
Yeah.
Is that as we decide we need to be more sustainable, those suppliers of ours will become more sustainable, otherwise they won't get our business. So this is things like reusing concrete in potholes, which are now obviously got quite a chance to deal with. So as we knock down a building, we maintain that concrete, ground it up,
put it back into the road to act as materials, rather than us buying new tar running. We're reusing that, and that's then also saving emissions. So that's the kind of thing that we can start to bring in. The scope 3 calculations, I'm working with a number of really exciting companies. I'm doing a number of projects to try and calculate what our emissions will be. We're doing a trial run, if you will, in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, probably middle of August, and to try and start to calculate accurately what our scope 3 is going to be.
Right, gosh, that'd be a big job.
It will be.
Okay, thank you, because it's always said this is a way in which local councils have actually got muscle
Yes.
and can use it to affect the supply chain
Yes.
all the way back. Thank you very much.
Again, one would hope that councils can work together in terms of some procurement activity to actually leverage value. Don't know whether there's any other questions. I don't think there are. So certainly, I think we're really pleased to hear some of the things that are going on, recognising that you've had to hit the ground running very, very fast. But certainly hearing the approach towards replacing vehicles on a gradual basis, because a lot of it is around education of people using them. The fact is that, you know, if you can go to a petrol station, you don't need to worry about not having put the vehicle on charge the night before, and actually building the charging infrastructure in our depots is something that you build up gradually, rather than do it all up front. So I think we've heard some really positive things about the direction of travel, which is really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the recommendations are to review and support the Council's net zero initiatives with a focus on assessing their effectiveness, alignment with the strategic objectives and potential to improve the quality of life of Swindon residents, and ensure that decarbonisation remains measurable and monitored priority across all areas of Council operations, and also to report and advocate that the Council continues to demonstrate leadership in addressing climate change by prioritising initiatives that deliver measurable benefits, attract investment, and support long-term financial and environmental sustainability. And I think we're all agreed with that. Are we all happy to agree to those recommendations? All those in favour? Thank you. Thanks very much. So I think it's you guys again on HVO fuels.
As table chair.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. I have a number of questions in no particular order. That's all right. The HVO fuel that we're purchasing or intending to purchase here, do we know what stock it comes from? Is it virgin feedstock? Is it from waste products?
We haven't chosen supply yet, but that would be one of the criteria. If it's palm oil, it is of no environmental benefit. It's arguably negative.
Yeah.
Something will be able to do that.
That was the question. Next question I had was, are we combining this with a long-term plan to electrify the fleet? But I think we've probably largely covered that in our previous discussions.
This is very much considered as a stock gap. It's not a long-term solution.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially all our vehicles are less than.
Sorry, mine's on.
All our vehicles are less than 2 years old, so it's a bit tricky to do that just at the moment.
Well, and that does bring me on to the next question a little bit, because 4.1 talks about refuse vehicles specifically, but I assume, maybe wrongly from this, that we have a much wider fleet of refuse vehicles.
I was just talking about refuse.
No, I appreciate that. I know there's obviously our 2 years, but I'm assuming that this HVO fuel use will apply to our entire fleet, vans, etc. as well, or are we intending it just for the refuse vehicles?
That is a good question, actually. The calculation is based on anything that fills up at waterside depot. So if there are vehicles that are non-refuse vehicles calculated there, then this has been considered, so that might change how much we actually save. There's no reason why we can't use HVO fuel in all vehicles.
Yeah. But my assumption is that most of our fleet fills up.
Yeah.
I would say we do have to be a little bit careful saving the vehicles, because I did approach it with Stagecoach to see if we were storing HVO fuel, would they be interested in moving their buses over?
Yep.
But apparently the situation with the buses is they can't use HVO, they'll invalid warranties. So that's we would probably have to check it, because we do have quite a few electric vehicles at the moment as well.
Yeah.
But we'd have to check the status of the diesel vehicles that we have that we could use on board.
Good, that was my next question, is have we, especially for our refuse vehicles, have we checked whether we're likely to invalidate any warranty or anything?
Refuse vehicles, yes, so that we can use it in refuse vehicles.
Right, okay, great.
Yeah, all of our refuse vehicles should be Euro 7 engines, which are able to use HVO. I don't know if there's like a legal reason why we can't do it.
So them being technically able to use it is one thing, but and a lot of manufacturers, especially bigger vehicles, as I understand it, have approved HVO for use in their vehicles. But I don't know off the top of my head what brand our
Mercedes
are.
for the most part.
Okay, so but I think it's just something worth a quick check on.
Yeah, that Mercedes.
So I think Mercedes probably have approved it. I don't know about that. For
But I'd be surprised if they haven't, but they might.
Yeah.
I did ask that question. I was informed that both the recycling wagons and the refuse wagons can go to HVO.
Right. Okay. Good.
And I think the question about Euro 7s, I think a lot of the buses, there's still some buses in Swindon that are Euro 5,
Yeah.
but they are actually swapping those over very quickly. So that position might change with bus companies moving forward as well, because I think we're getting a lot of Oxford buses which are Euro 7.
Yeah. Final question I had. I think there's some concern in the HVO market around price volatility and supply issues. Considering, I think our reasoning is sound as to why you're looking to do this, and it being a stopgap measure effectively to see us through to into the 2030s. But I imagine that an awful lot of organisations are having exactly the same considerations as what we are, and that the demand for HVO fuels is therefore likely to go through the roof. How concerned are we based on that about potential supply issues, and are we likely to therefore need to augment it with some fossil fuel diesel as well along the way?
Vaguely concerned, but not massively so. Like the HVO market is increasing exponentially because more and more people are trying to do this. I think the bigger concern is to avoid sort of palm oil HVO as opposed to necessarily. I haven't seen any evidence yet that we would struggle to get the supply. I think we should be able to get the supply. It's just the quality of the supply that is more practical.
Thanks so much. I think the volatility works both ways as well, and then in the not just for HVO fuel prices, but I hope that peace in Ukraine and peace in the Middle East, and that will drive the fuel prices down, which then means we've got a bigger gap between the two prices, which we have to take into consideration when we do our accounts as well. At the moment, we can only work with what we know at the moment, which is the £150,000 difference, which doesn't seem to be a fantastic amount, taking into consideration perhaps the benefits that we get, but we can't use those benefits as part of the accounting as such. We use the hard figures, but also with HVO, like anything, once the industry starts picking up, they should start looking at better ways of manufacturing, cheaper ways of manufacturing. There should be supply and demand should mean that the manufacturing rate increases as well. So there's all sorts of.
Can I ask for one?
Yes, Karen.
Bearing in mind we've talked about other fleets of local authorities, parishes, etc., around the town as well. I think it's probably fair to say that most parishes in Swindon are not as well equipped with people like yourself to be specialists on these kind of issues. Have we considered if we go down this route whether it would be wise of us to then issue sort of guidance note type thing to some of those parishes as well, or other organisations that may benefit from making some decision?
Yeah, that is going to be part of something we want to do because by very nature their actions will be part of the borough's scope 3. Yes. So there is an inherent benefit of us trying to encourage them as best we can. Lessons learned and the like. Sort of supplier, etc., etc.
And most of them drive their vehicle fleets to Waterside pretty regularly as well, so might be another little revenue stream there.
Sorry, on that. So I think the parishes have got more scope to moving over to electric vehicles because they're all smaller, which probably want to encourage that before keeping diesel that uses HVO.
Yeah.
But it's something that certainly we should be looking at.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you. Yeah, just thinking about the supply and prices problems. If we find we can't get the supply because it's all gone to aeroplanes at the moment, Can we go back to using diesel, or can we just swap out again?
It takes about 2 days to flush out from diesel to HVO. I don't know how long it takes to reverse, but it's not long.
Okay, so yeah,
So it's like, okay, yeah.
doesn't seem to be much downside then.
And it's the other is that because HVO is far more chemically treated than standard diesel is. I won't bore you. It is cleaner, which means that it could have a less draining factor on the engine, so the engine should go a lot longer. So theoretically, that actually gives us time to switch over from these current refuse vehicles to electric vehicles. That's what expand that, which means that lower costs to do the maintenance of these vehicles, etc., etc.
It's good, isn't it?
It's really good.
It's all good. Yeah. Can I just point that back to the council scorecards? On waste reduction of
The microphone, Jen.
Oh, my, sorry. I just wanted to just put this in here as they, and so for waste reduction of food, our mark went up from 19% to 40%. How about that? We did well on some sectors.
And that should be increasing as well now we're rolling out to apartments, flats as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's sure we'll come on the scorecard. I'm very confident we can get Swindon up to about 50%, currently at 39, with just answering questions more.
Yeah.
It's not an efficient way of getting information, but I think Swindon is much better there. And that's, I'll have a conversation with Councillor Bushell, what she wants next year, in the portfolio, but if I've got the capacity to do that, I will be putting more time into those questions. All completely.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
I think we've pretty well come to the end of our questions. Recognising it's work in progress, because obviously you've still got some work to do, and you've got costs and obviously some work to see where it's working, look at supply and so on and so forth. Are we happy to endorse the work that's going on to progress us towards a transition to HVO fuel use from April 1st, 2026-27, or whenever it's possible, acknowledging the impacts it will have around the costs and operation of the vehicle fleet? Are we happy to endorse that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you both for your time and effort to explain and answer so many questions from us. So carry on. Item 8 is an update on progress from current working groups. So I don't think we have any significant updates. I do feel that we need to get back into where we need to move in terms of the development of the procurement framework, because of course that has a direct impact in terms of scope 3 emissions in terms of our suppliers. So I think there's some work that can be done there, and I think we just need to re-energise that work stream if we're happy to try to do that. Yeah, everybody agree? Yes, excellent, thank you. So the other item is work programme. So we've got a work programme report here. So we've got the leader suggests the following items that we might wish to consider: clean waterways, and ensure that sewage isn't pumped into our rivers, which follows on from the work that we've been doing in scrutiny on the Thames Water, and community. How do we use community energy to lower our carbon emissions? So, do we have any sort of thoughts on those two as potential topics to cover? Councillor Butcher.
Yeah, I think we should absolutely cover those. Community energy in particular as a real opportunity for the people of Swindon. So, yeah, we'll want to straight on
that. Ed. I was just going to say that I was invited, but I'm not able to attend the Cyprus Net Zero Pub. I'm doing a tour of the community energy in Bristol, which is on July 19th. So there is an open invitation if anyone's able to attend to that. And I will be attempting to, Councillor Bush will likewise is unable to attend. So as I said, that option is there. And I'm hoping to speak to what Bristol Energy have done, and see what we can do, and copy over this. So it's on the agenda.
What date was that?
The 9th of July.
9th of July.
It's a Wednesday. Or is it Wednesday? It's a Wednesday of that week. I think it's the 9th.
Yeah, I might be interested in going there.
10th of July, isn't
Would that be the giant turbine
Yes,
that Lawrence Western?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Oh, great. I've seen that.
Yeah, if everyone just sort of emails me after the report wants to go, I could forward you and it'll be, I'll let you know the rest of them.
Is there a limit on numbers for the delegation?
Well, it was only the one who was invited, so I don't know if they're, I could ask if more people would go.
Who would be interested in going? I certainly would. Councillor Butcher, Councillor LeBaron, things like that.
Okay, I'll let someone there at the moment.
Yeah, well, yes.
3.5, yeah.
If you can see if we can get some more spaces and then we can offer those round. Thank you very much. So, are there any other topics that we feel we need to add to the work programme at this stage? Have you got any further thoughts on that?
Not big enough program anyway.
Yeah. Right, okay, well, we'll add those two to that. So we've got recommendation 2.1 on page 19, which is to consider the provision licence work programme as attached to the appendix 1, discuss any additions, amendments or removals. So we're happy to run with that programme together with those two additional topics. Item 2.2 to authorise the statutory scrutiny officer in consultation with the chair, the committee to finalise the work programme for the 2025-26 municipal year in line with what we just discussed. We're happy to agree that? Excellent, thank you very much. Item 10, so look at mine, which is status request for action and or information. I'm happy to know the contents of the report. Yeah.
Yeah.
And any comments or anything in terms of the report? So we have to agree that subject to the for any further action that may come up that we're issues shown as being completed, we can remove from the status report. So we actually show them as completed. You happy to do that? Thank you very much. So thank you all for your attendance. Thank you to the public who've looked in. Thank you to Aled, as always. And I'll now form